Okay, everyone, welcome to the Accelerativ Thrust podcast. I'm Dan,
And I'm Erik.
and today we are going to be talking about something really, really cool. But before we get into what the episode is about, Erik and I were just having a conversation, actually, just now about letting you all know that every week we are going to be I was going to say uploading, but we're not going to be uploading anything to Spotify. Can I talk? Sometimes I wonder if I can even talk, Erik. You ever have moments like that?
Yeah. I'm just kidding. Yes, I do have moments like that.
Oh,
for sure.
But anyway, updating. We're going to be updating the Accelerativ Thrust playlist. In addition to updating the Accelerativ Thrust podcast, we're going to try and upload an episode every week. Of course, there might be some weeks that just might not be possible, depending, if things happen in life. But and then every time that we upload a new episode, we're also going to update the playlist because we always talk about a lot of bands, artists, songs, and things like that. This episode is going to be no different, as you will surely hear here in a minute. And so just to let you guys know, right now there's no set schedule when I'm going to be uploading or when we're going to be uploading new episodes every week, but we are going to head in that direction. And I'll keep you posted. We'll keep you posted. I keep saying ow. We will keep you posted.
You're doing most of the work. I'm just here for color.
Now that's not
just little jokes and
that's totally
like that.
Come on, Erik. That's totally not true. You were just telling me that you were promoting on Facebook, and I'm not on Facebook.
That's true. I did bother all my Facebook friends about it.
Yeah, and that's that's important, man, because
that's something.
I gave up Facebook. No, it's a lot. I really appreciate that, Erik. And you should pat yourself on the back.
I already was, but I'll continue.
Oh, dude, you should just do it the whole episode.
That was my plan.
There you go. Maybe that's what this episode will be called. Erik pats himself on the back the whole episode.
No, I don't think that's what it'll be called.
You don't like that
one? We'll see what happens.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'm drinking coconut water.
Wow.
Yeah, have you ever had coconut water before, Erik?
No, actually, I don't do well with coconut. It's kind of a migraine trigger for me. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. One of the few things. Pretty much that and pineapple and artificial sweetener. Which anyone that knows me knows that list has been pared down a lot. It used to go on for like 5 minutes, all the stuff that would give me a migraine. But now it's just those three things. So.
Well, artificial sweetener I can totally understand. But I wonder if coconut water, and that's interesting you say pineapple because I'm drinking coconut water with pineapple.
Oh, man, that'd be good.
That's like a double migraine right there for you. I'm sorry, Erik. I'm just by even mentioning that, I'm sure I'm triggering it, aren't I?
Yeah, it's starting. I'm seeing spots out of the corner of my eye.
But
yeah, pretty rough.
I wonder if that could be because of like something like, are you sensitive to something in? Because I know like coconut and pineapple both, I think, have high amounts of potassium. Like
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Do bananas bother you at all?
No.
Okay.
No. So.
Well,
I don't know. They're easy enough things to avoid. Like pretty much.
Not for me, man. I love this stuff.
I mean, unless I were in Hawaii, I guess, then it'd be really hard.
Yeah, you would have to. That's all they have in Hawaii. I heard pineapple and coconuts.
It's true.
Like, yeah. I mean, that's like, I don't even think they eat anything else or drink anything else over there.
Just ham and Spam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then there's those things called the Loco Moco. You ever heard of those things?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
What's
the
that?
Loco Moco. It's this weird, like, because normally, like, when you think of, like, tropical places like Hawaii, you're automatically going to think about, like, sitting on the beach with, like, yeah, like a pineapple or a coconut drinking out of it or something, right?
Yeah.
Like that cartoon Tailspin. Uh, Baloo. They were. That's all they were doing when they were. Seems like all they were
Yeah.
doing were flying planes and then drinking out of coconuts, like the entire, like cartoon. I don't know if you ever watched Tailspin or not. Growing
No,
up,
but with that recommendation, I'm gonna start.
it was one of my favorite cartoons that came on after school in elementary school.
Oh,
But anyway, and what was I even talking about? Oh yeah, okay, so the Loco Moco.
yeah.
Apparently, like this is like a big thing in Hawaii. It's this dish where they take like rice, just like plain white rice, and they put like this hamburger patty, this ground beef patty that's like it. I guess it doesn't taste like a traditional hamburger, but it's like I guess it tastes closer to meatloaf than it does a traditional like hamburger patty, and then they smother it with this like super high fat gravy, and then they serve it with a big old side of macaroni salad or potato salad. And like it's seriously, it's like
Wow.
the most disgusting yet wonderful things all on one plate is what it
Oh,
sounds like.
it does sound good. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, so yeah, no, this is like an official thing in Hawaii. I found out. It's like, so that's what Hawaiians are eating. Like, that's what they're keeping from the rest of the United States. Oh yeah. Oh, and also an over easy egg on top.
Oh, snap.
So like,
That does sound
yeah. So like everything. Yeah, dude, look it up. Just look at pictures of this thing. It's
all
absolutely
right.
insane. But yeah. So that was our conversation about Hawaii and coconuts and pineapples and stuff like that.
And I'm just having a plain sparkling water because I'm the
Yes.
most boring person in the world.
Well, I mean, okay, is it plain or is it flavored?
No, it's just water with sparkles.
Water with
it.
sparkles. I like that. Water with sparkles. I like a sparkling water.
Yeah,
I do. I
I'm
like to
addicted to it.
I like to mix it once in a while. I'll mix it with like orange juice or something,
Mm.
like a little bit of orange juice or
Nice.
whatever. But I actually don't like adding a lot to it because I do actually like that sort of bitter seltzer taste. Like I've trained myself to kind of like that, where it doesn't get too sweet. But yes. Okay. So moving on. So yes, Accelerativ Thrust playlist updated every week. Oh, we have a new logo. That was the big thing that I was not wanting to mention last week. Maybe I was overreacting or over hyping it or something, but it's a cool logo. You guys should all check it out. It's on the Spotify page now. And
Well, I'll use it when I post about the new episode. So
there we go. That's awesome.
anyone who knows me will see it. And if you don't know me, then I guess you're on your own.
You're SOL, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And anyone who knows me will see it on Instagram. And also, anyone who knows Erik will also see it on Instagram too.
Right.
Because Erik's also on
But
Instagram.
if you know both of us, you won't see it.
You won't see it. We'll make
It
sure.
cancels out. See, because Instagram has this thing where it thinks it's a double post. And so you won't see it at all.
Yes,
So,
exactly. So if you know both of us, yeah, sorry. We have to cancel you. And also I wanted to mention too, so right now this podcast is available on all three platforms. Transistor.fm. I think the website address is simply accelerativthrust.transistor.fm. Also, this website called Content Made Right, what content I believe the website address there is contentmaderight.com/accelerative thrust. And then on Spotify, which the best way, of course, to look on Spotify would be just to go to Spotify and search for it. You will probably find also on Spotify a link to the playlist as well, the weekly playlist. So it's the same playlist. We're just going to update it every week. So bonus for Spotify listeners. But choose your platform, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so moving on. The episode today. Would you like to kind of do like an introduction here, Eric? Or
okay. I can do that.
All right.
So, anyone who knows me, at least within the past 25 years or so, probably also knew my friend Sean, because we were pretty much inseparable, joined at the hip for 25 years. He passed away, I don't know, was it last year or the year before? It's been a little while.
I think it was
a year and a half, maybe.
Almost, about a year and a half, yeah.
Yeah. So after he passed, his wife Julie asked me to go through his records and kind of disperse those to some of his friends, and so I did that. I just set up a Discogs, invited every person one at a time to kind of go through, pick out things they wanted, and then I either delivered them to them or mailed them to them or whatever. Because Sean had a lot of records, he had a lot of really cool records, and so I wanted to be able to share those with other people. I didn't keep very many unless it had a very specific sort of memory, or if it really meant a lot to Sean in a certain way. And actually the ones that meant the most to Sean, I think his wife Julie still has. So, which I'll mention one of those specifically later. But yeah, so Dan and I were talking about some of these records that we inherited and that it might be cool to talk about them, I guess, in the context of that, how it reflected sort of our relationship and friendship with Sean to an extent, but also just to talk about the music. So, I guess that's about the best I can set it up. So,
okay. We're going to talk about, it's going to be kind of similar to the 2020 lists that we did, in that we each picked 3 records that, because I was one of the ones that I guess you, for lack of a better way to say, chosen to have some of these records. I mean,
if anyone's listening right now, I just got to say this, and you didn't hear from me and you feel overlooked or left out because I didn't reach out to you. Honestly, the criteria was people that I know Sean was friends with who also collect records. Like, that was the big deciding thing, And so if I didn't know that you collected records, I probably didn't reach out to you. So I just wanted to say that, like, I didn't purposely ever leave anyone out on purpose, obviously, because that would be a terrible thing to do. But if you feel overlooked, sorry about that. And honestly, I probably still have 10 records that I could just send your way. So.
Well, and I gotta say, it was a real honor that you thought about me, Eric, because Sean was just a really great guy, and there were endless conversations about music and things like that every single time I saw him in public, whether it was at a record store, a show, or just running into him randomly, which happened a few times. I mean, he would always take the time to stop and talk to me about things, and always had a great sense of humor, and always had a creative outlook on everything. And so it was a true honor that you thought of me, and I got to thank you. I can't thank you enough for that, Erik.
Yeah, of course. No problem at all.
So
I think he thought a lot of you and would be happy they got some of his records.
That's awesome. I can only hope so. Sean was such an awesome dude, and also his brother Scott. Been friends with him for a while too, and so yeah.
Yeah, I used to call Sean SJ1, and then Scott was SJ2.
That's so awesome.
Scott is still SJ2, even when I see him out. I guess I don't see him out anymore, but for a little while we still got to go to like a film scene for the Grindhouse movies, and we got to sit together a few times before the pandemic started, and that was a big thing because that was something all three of us did on Wednesdays for quite a long time. So
sure, and yeah,
nice to be able to do Scott again.
Yep, and both of them were always. I mean, Scott's also a big music head, and he's also I know he's into comic books, sci-fi. I know Sean was as well, sci-fi. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just both of those guys. I've actually like learned a lot about music and various artists and things like that from talking to both of them, honestly, at various times. So yeah, we're going to be talking about some of Sean's records that we both were able to blessed to have possession of now that he has passed. So how do you want to do this, Erik? Would you like to
I don't I guess I could go first.
Okay.
That's cool with you.
Do you want to do it? Do you want to do it the same way with that we did with our best of 2020 and do one, like you do one, I do one, or do you want to do all three?
Good.
Okay. All right.
We can do that.
Okay.
So I wanted to pick this one first so I could just slightly go into the kind of relationship Sean and I had. This won't take forever. I'll try to make this as succinct as I can. But we didn't actually know each other until about 1995, which now that I say that out loud is a really long time ago. But in Muscatine, growing up with, similar people of similar interests, of similar ages, it was strange that we hadn't met before that point. And we actually met at community college in a psychology class. And we went out for a cigarette, and that was it. And we were just like, let's blow this class off and go listen to Mr. Bungle. And that was kind of the beginning of it. We went away to school in Waterloo together in about 1996. Pretty much from there, we lived within, 100 feet of each other for the next 25 years. I guess there were a few years he moved out to the DC area, where we weren't as close. But yeah, pretty much the rest of the time we were right next to each other. But part of growing up in a town with people is kind of figuring out that you did the same things even though you didn't know each other, And one of the first things we figured out about each other was that we sort of had an animosity towards each other on accident. So this is kind of weird. But at the Musser Public Library, which is the Muscatine Library, there were two things that I checked out all the freaking time, like all the time. One was a Stephen King story called The Grandma or The Grandmother. It was on cassette. The other side was Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. So I checked that out every time I went to the library. The other one was the Clockwork Orange soundtrack. And some of the times it wasn't available, and it always pissed me off. It turns out that Sean was the other person checking that thing out. And so we discovered that just by talking about, the library, I love that. I always check this out, and Sean was like, what? You were the person that had those when I wanted them? And so that was always really funny to us that we sort of hated each other. We didn't even know each other. But yeah, so when I was going through Sean's records after he passed, he had the copy of Clockwork Orange from the Musser Public Library. It says property of Musser Public Library on it. Mm-hmm. I didn't know he had this. I don't know if he bought it at one of their sales. I don't know if he stole it, but I didn't know he had it. And that's really weird because we talked about, like I said, this thing where, it was almost a point of contention for us. And so, and maybe I did know he had it, but I forgot or whatever. But it was sort of a watershed moment to find that record because it kind of took it all the way back to when we were kids or whatever. But so with that being said, that's sort of the background of why I chose this record, but also on a personal sort of away from Sean thing, the Clockwork Orange soundtrack changed my life. I mean, it didn't even change my life. There was nothing there to change. It created my interest in music. Everything about it was so weird and strange. I had never heard anything really like it because I was checking this out well before I saw the film. Because, I mean, I was pretty young. I was probably checking this out when I was 8 or 9, maybe. And so I had never heard anything like that. I listened to, I guess, some of the heavy metal I listened to might have had synthesizers in it. But, yeah, and the way it was constructed, it was so weird. There's like these long classical pieces. Some of them are on synthesizers. Some of them are the orchestra. There's vocoded versions of like the Ode to Joy, Beethoven stuff that's presented through this strange filter. Because I hadn't even seen the movie yet, so I had no concept of what I was listening to.
I was actually going to ask you that.
Yeah, but to this day, when I hear the Clockwork Orange theme, when the record starts, I'm transported. Like, we tried to listen to it. That's another funny thing, too, is the record player at my house is right next to the dinner table. So my wife and I listen to a record every night when we eat. And so a lot of them have been from Sean, I put this on and I couldn't even eat. I couldn't even pay attention to my meal. Like, I'm just so transported by this music that I can barely function. I shut down completely and just listen to it. The composer is Wendy Carlos, who is a pioneer of electronic music. I would say probably the greatest ambassador for electronic synthesizer music of all time. The Switched on Bach record is, for most people, the first time synthesizer music was taken seriously. And so that can't be overstated. Wendy Carlos's impact on electronic music. And it's just a good foundation for a lot of the stuff that Sean and I were into, because he was also young. I think he was a year older than me. So at a very young age, we both independently were already on this path that would bring us together later. And so I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing that happened. So,
wow,
yeah,
that's awesome, dude. What a great story. What an amazing thing that there's this piece of music out there that just it transports you back and was at the end of the day just sort of this connecting point between someone and their best friend.
Yeah, before we knew each other.
Yeah, before you knew each other, exactly. It's amazing, stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, I've seen Clockwork Orange, several times. I'm starting to get into it now, but for the longest time, I never really listened to soundtrack music.
Yeah.
I just didn't. There was no reason. I didn't have any like, dislike for it or anything. It just wasn't something that I did, you know. But I've been listening to a few lately. You know, I'm getting into some John Carpenter stuff.
Oh yeah,
I think the Stranger Things soundtracks are amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and so this is the first time I actually gave Wendy Carlos, the Clockwork Orange soundtrack, a listen. And yes, I mean, it's very, very difficult for me to be critical of any classical music, because to me, it's like classical music is the one music that just automatically is just amazing to me every time I hear it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just really, like, I feel like you almost can't judge classical music, because to me anyway, it sort of seems like the place where all music comes from, you know?
Oh, for sure.
And so it's just, anytime I hear classical music, I'm blown away by it, because I just think that there were elements of things that, it's kind of like how people, this is going to be a weird comparison, but it's kind of like how you think about the pyramids and how they were built, and how supposedly there was no advanced technology in these civilizations, yet they found ways to build these advanced pyramids. I almost feel like classical music's like the same way when you talk about composition compared to then.
Yeah.
It's sort of like,
there
was no technology available to help any of these composers of classical music out. There was nothing.
Oh, for sure.
And in fact, wasn't Beethoven, I mean, he was like blind, right? He was...
I think he went deaf.
Or deaf, okay. Deaf. Yeah. But and of course there were a lot of different, just different things that, you would think would be kind of like a hindrance to these people, these composers, that they just wouldn't want to even bother making music that is so complex and beautiful. But they did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's more complex and beautiful than anything. I don't want to say anything, but it's more complex and beautiful than most things that are created today with all this technology that is available to us. Just like the pyramids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's an all right comparison. I think that trying to understand how the pyramids were created is, I mean, it is just as hard as figuring out how classical music is created. And of course, people go to school and learn and everything else. But like, almost, it's funny. It's like the idea of de-evolution to an extent. Like, it took hundreds of years for us to forget how to create music that's so complex and rich.
Yes.
Like, it was like one person made it slightly poppier. Like, maybe Mozart made it slightly more accessible or something. And then you just kind of keep going down that path until you get to like the inclusion of like folk or indigenous music, and then that becomes kind of, I don't even know how to say it, a commodity,
Yeah.
And then, over time, it's like, you just get machines to do it or something.
Right.
And then, like, at the end of the day, me included, people just sat and listened to, like, a single drone tone that was created by a synthesizer for 40 minutes. And they go, man, that's some heavy shit. That's super deep.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And, like, I'm just as guilty as anyone. And I do love music like that. So, but at the same time, I really don't think I would say 90% of musicians putting music out couldn't even comprehend 10 seconds of how to compose classical music. I know I can't.
Yeah.
No way.
It's somewhat...
Me writing string parts is the stupidest shit anyone's ever witnessed. It's like, well, we got the root note, let's put that on cello, and then we'll put a fifth on the violin, and then we'll put the melodic lead on the viola, and we'll call that like really smart music. And it's like, no, not even a little. You do that for like 30 seconds of a song, and you think you're a genius or some shit.
Kind of like that meme where you put like yourself like on top, and you're just like, I just composed a beautiful classical piece today, and then a picture of Beethoven. Bitch, please. It's really incredible. It's incredible. Like, and it really does seem like there wasn't any room for not knowing theory, in order to do that stuff. And I mean, I'm glad that music has, I don't even want to say de-evolved, but I guess that's kind of for lack of a better way to describe it. If you're talking about, I'm glad it's happened that way, because now I can make music. I can make music anytime I want to, like.
I'm so glad that it's more accessible.
Exactly.
And not only that, but it is closer to our humanity, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I think we relate with music. I think with classical music, you feel it, without a doubt. It has an emotive response. But, if you have someone using words, you can connect much more quickly. It may not be as deep. I don't know. You can argue that, but you definitely can relate with music quicker when it's using language versus just, notes and things. So I would say it's more accessible, not just for musicians, but for listeners as well.
Absolutely. I would like to see any information dug up about the classical composers that, if there were any that existed, that rebelled against the idea back then, like almost like punk rock classical composers who might have been considered like outsider music back then. Because I mean,
I would say that honestly, the ones we've heard of are probably the ones who did that.
You think so?
You know what I mean?
You think so?
Yeah, because they were interesting. They brought something different. Beethoven was a lot different. I mean, everyone had their own style too. I think you hear like classical and it seems the same, but Beethoven's like so much heavier than Mozart for the most part.
Oh yeah, yes,
and like, just all kinds of people. I guess wrote in a lot of different ways. I am by no means an expert on classical music. I wish I was.
Yeah.
But I mostly know more about maybe a little more modern, experimental classical and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that it's sort of lost. I think people reference it and use the ideas, but actually understanding it, I don't know. I'm sure, like I said, there's highly trained people out there who do understand what's happening in classical music. But for the most part, I don't think most of us know anything that's happening.
The average person who has a guitar has no idea. That's for sure. Totally. And I think that's great in a lot of ways.
I do too. Yeah.
All right.
Keep it for the elites.
Exactly.
I will say too, though, that the idea of recreating those classical pieces and designing every sound using a modular synthesizer, and that can't be underrated or understated. It's outrageous.
No, absolutely. I had that one record. Yeah. You might have it. Switched on Bach.
Oh yeah,
it was
for sure
incredible.
Yeah, it's really something.
Yeah, that there's people that can actually do that. Yeah, that's amazing. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so that's Wendy Carlos, the same person. So.
Oh, she did all the switched on records. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, that's her modular that's on the cover of Switched on Bach.
Wow.
But as far as I know, I don't know. I might be making shit up, but that's what I heard.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Erik, my first pick of Sean's records, and let me preface this real quick about the earliest memories that I recall of me meeting Sean. Of course, he was playing in your old band Gimpy, and I couldn't say what show it was, but my guess is it was probably sometime in the late 90s, 97, 98. I had already known Scott, his younger brother, for at least a couple years. And what I recall, and my memory could be hazy about this a little bit, but what I recall is just talking with him about noise music. And I just remember, like, he just had like a really like funny in a really good way, like humorous way of like kind of looking at the way modern music was done, and so he was recommending like all of these artists who honestly I probably didn't even bother to check out at the time. I think I was probably 17 or something, and but eventually I checked out a lot of the art, like Air, for example. I remember Air was like a
artist. Way in the air.
Yeah, and I remember that was one thing that he told me that I had to listen to. I remember Godspeed You Black Emperor was one thing that and so I mean that, like, no specific like time that I can really nail down when I first met Sean, but I know it was around that time period. And I know, I'm pretty sure that our first conversation was, that I recall anyway, was about that. And it was probably I don't know, like the Armory in Muscatine or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the first record that I'm going to talk about, I think that this is a perfect record that it totally makes sense to me that Sean would be into something like this. It's Helios Creed, who was the guitar player or one half of Chrome, which was like an experimental band from the 70s. They did this album called Alien Soundtracks, and another one called Half Machine, Half Lips, or Half Lips, Half Machines, or Half Moves, or something like that. I don't remember the exact title. But those two albums are often cited, I would say, as much as like something like Suicide, when it comes to people who do like deconstructed sort of like noise, experimental, electronic, weird rock and roll or something,
Yeah.
I always hear people talking about Chrome. And so I actually didn't know who Helios Creed was. I listened to Chrome, but I didn't know anything about the members. But what really gained my attention with this record is that it's on Amphetamine Reptile Records, which is a label that I'm a fan of. A lot of music that came out on that label from the 90s. And so I put this record on, and I was just blown away by the musicianship that was on it. I've never quite heard anybody play guitar quite like this. It almost sounds like a sci-fi shred metal album, which I know that description sounds kind of lame, but almost like if Yngwie Malmsteen was doing like a punk rock science fiction soundtrack score or something. But I don't even really want to throw something like Yngwie Malmsteen's name into it, because that's not really what it sounds like at all. It's just It's just that there's so many strange elements of like shred guitar on here. There's elements of like post rock, punk rock. There's crazy, absurd synthesizers, weird guest vocals. It's there's samplers going on here. I'm pretty sure he's using drum machines, and there's elements of just noise and prog rock and all kinds of like, just it's just a really, really weird, cool sound. And it's something that when I listen to it, I'm like, yes, this makes sense that Sean would be into something like this, because it's just a great weirdo rock record. It's not something that I would put on all the time. I wouldn't listen to this probably constantly. You know what I mean? Like it's not something that I'm gonna listen to all the time, but it's something that I'm sure I'll revisit at least, I don't know, once every couple of months. When I'm in the mood. The first time I put it on, it was like on a Saturday night in my room, and it transported me back to almost like being in high school. You know what I mean? And just listening to like music by yourself on a Saturday night when there was nothing to do. And it just it was a really, really, really fun experience. I just think it's a fun record. I think that there's just a lot of experimentation going on with it, and then I found out that he was in Chrome, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes total sense, because what I heard of Chrome didn't really sound too far from this. I would say that maybe this is a little more, I don't want to say conventional, but it definitely was a little bit more, I guess, straight guitar rock oriented than Chrome was, or at least what I've heard of Chrome. But yeah, so that's my first pick.
Yeah, I liked aspects of this. It's hilarious though. Like, I think that when someone passes away, you start to just only ascribe positive things to their memory,
Right.
You just remember everything in like this rosy way. But Sean definitely had a higher tolerance than I did for pure weirdness. I like weirdness, okay? I like weird music, weird movies, whatever. But when it's like really overt, like it's just in your face, it's constant, it's a wall of weirdness.
Yeah.
Like I start to kind of pull back from that.
Sure.
Like I get a little overwhelmed. I can't grab onto any specific thing and enjoy it. It's just like, I don't know how to describe it. Like a bad drug trip or something. It's just like too much. It's overwhelming. And I think Sean really enjoyed that feeling. I think he enjoyed making music that way too.
Yeah.
And so I think we were a pretty good balance. Not to leave anyone out that we also worked with, but us two together were we balanced each other out a little bit. That's not to say I didn't like any of this, but it was at the absolute threshold of weird for me.
Yeah.
It sounded like the Butthole Surfers to me.
Yep.
And I like the Butthole Surfers a lot, but I mostly like it when they kind of cool off a little bit and they start to almost have a song, not just the insane noise. I like that too, but only short bursts really. It reminded me a lot of Buckethead as well, or even some of other like things that Bill Laswell has done. Maybe some of the Praxis stuff.
Buckethead. That's what I was looking for actually, because I knew that when I referenced Yngwie Malmsteen, that wasn't quite the reference I was looking for. I was looking for something a little more weird that also, treaded heavily on that sort of like shred sort of thing going on.
Right.
Buckethead is a way better comparison than Yngwie Malmsteen. So yeah, everybody listening, just forget the nonsense I said about Yngwie Malmsteen. Not even close.
But yeah, it reminded me very much of that time period though too. Like, I think that this record sounds very much like the weird shit that was happening in 1992.
Yeah, it was definitely a record of its time, no doubt.
Yeah.
And the Praxis stuff, definitely. Mm-hmm. I hear the Praxis thing going on. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy collaborated with those guys at some point.
Yeah, it reminds me of a lot of things. Zillatron, all that stuff, which is awesome stuff. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed all of it. But it all pushes the envelope for me to a place that I would not put it on very often, to be quite honest. Yeah. Like, I enjoy it, but but it's awesome. It's an awesome choice because it perfectly encapsulates that threshold of weirdness that Sean had. And it was much higher than most people. Like, I don't even know if he even thought there was a thing called noise music necessarily. Like, it was all the same. It was like, if it's weird and inaccessible, then that's what I like.
Yes.
Not always, but, I just don't think he would find a difference between Borgatominus or whatever they're called and Helios Creed,
Yeah.
Or any of that stuff. Like, or the boredoms. It's all the same level of just insanity.
Boredom.
And so
that's a name I hadn't heard in a while.
Right. Yeah. But I think this perfectly encapsulates that. One thing I think is funny is, like, it's obviously a squashed picture of Dan Aykroyd as the Conehead, right?
Yeah. That's what it totally looks like, doesn't it?
Right. It has to be.
I mean, anyway,
that's a side note.
with green skin. That's dude. Yeah, no, it's definitely. I can definitely hear where you're coming from with that. The overwhelming weirdness of it all. Like I said, it's definitely not something that I'd listen to all the time. Now I have to just really quick as a side note, I have to respectfully disagree with your stance on the Butthole Surfers. I am a huge Butthole Surfers fan. And I am a fan of every single side of that band. And this is something that's like even like to the point where I even liked their last album they put out called Weird Revolution, which I'm not sure if you ever heard that or not.
Nope.
There are moments where that record sounds like it came out in like 2001 or something like that, but there are moments where it straight up sounds like they're trying to become like a pop band. Like, and when I say pop, I don't mean like pop rock. I mean like sounds like they're trying to sound like, that Lynn song Steal My Sunshine?
Yeah.
Like something like that, or even like some sort of weird version of like I don't know. Like that fastball song, The Way. It's like, I even like that record. And that's a record that is just completely divisive among Butthole Surfers. That was the last record they ever put out. Anyway.
Don't get me wrong. I love the Butthole Surfers.
Dude.
I love them. Locust Abortion Technician.
Oh,
Hairway
God.
to Steven's one of my favorites.
Dude.
Probably ever.
Hairway to Steven, man.
Amazing.
The opening track on Hairway to Steven, Jimmy, is like, just for that alone, it's the most hilarious thing.
It's so good. It's such a great record. So,
it is. I
didn't want it to sound like I don't like that.
No. Yeah, and
in their most weird, extreme moments, that's what Helios Creed sounded like all the time.
Yes. And to be fair, in the early Butthole Surfers years, that's what they sounded like all of the time. You know,
Right.
like at least on their first EP. But yeah, it's weird. God, I could talk so much about the Butthole Surfers, but it's interesting how also even in their earliest noisy years, how that band actually had like a lot of jangly sort of like melody creep. It's like you knew that they were eventually going to, at some point in their career, have a big hit like Pepper, but you just didn't know when. It was whenever they decided it was going to happen, you know?
Sure.
But anyway, side note from that.
Yeah, their big hit for me was Sweet Loaf. I heard that off the beaten track on KFMH, and probably 87 or 88. I think it was a newer song. I never came back from it. The whole intro, that whole kid talking to his dad, it's just like, it's the best thing of all time. I was a little kid and someone just going, Satan!
Yeah, Satan!
Like, I died. You know?
Dad?
I loved it so much.
What does regret mean? Well, son. Like, and it just comes out of nowhere. Like, at the beginning sounds like a movie.
It's so good.
It's just, it's great.
Yeah, and I heard that song before I heard Sweet Leaf. I mean, that tells you something.
Yeah.
Probably not by much, because soon after that, or probably around then, Anthrax covered Sabbath Bloody Sabbath on their, what was that, Killer Bees or something? I don't know. It was a live thing.
They, I don't remember.
Bring the Noise. Bring the Noise EP. That's what it was.
Yeah, okay, Bring the Noise EP. And then I also know, you remember that band Ugly Kid Joe?
Yeah.
They covered Sweet Leaf also.
Oh, okay.
And that was the first time I heard that. And then, actually, it's funny too. Faith No More's The Real Thing is the first time I ever heard War Pigs.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I think that was probably one of the first times I heard a Sabbath cover as well. Like Anthrax and Faith No More, for sure.
And I still think that, to this day, anytime I talk to hardcore Sabbath fans, I probably piss them off, but I still think I actually prefer the Faith No More version, because it was...
it's pretty good.
I mean, I love Sabbath, don't get me wrong, but man, Faith No More, they totally made that song their own.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's cool.
It is.
Also, though, Len, You Can't Stop the Bum Rush. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this.
It's a great record.
I love that album.
Great album.
Like, anyone who wants to hate on me for that, I don't care.
No.
It is awesome. It plays like a history of electronic music and hip hop. And it really does.
And hip hop. And C.C. DeVille was on it too.
And Biz Markie.
And Biz Markie was on it. And the what's his name? DJ some big DJ, and I can't even. Oh God, I feel terrible. But anyway,
bigger than Biz Markie?
No. Just kidding. No, not bigger than Biz Markie. It's Mr. Dibbs, not DJ, Mr. Dibbs.
Yeah, for sure.
Mr. Dibbs was on it. Yeah. Mr. Dibbs did a lot of collaborations with like Atmosphere back in the day and things like that.
He's the Soul Sonic Force, right?
Mr. Dibbs?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Or no.
I don't think so. I think he was. Maybe he is. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't speak on hip hop history that I'm not completely like sure of.
If you're obsessed with vocoders like I am, the song, I think it's called Man of the Year.
Man of the Year,
it's the one that starts with Biz Markie. That is some of the best vocoding. It's so cool.
It is, and it's
I put that song on way too often. And I don't even care.
It sounds just like Kraftwerk, man. Like,
it's really good.
And then
the Cryptic Souls crew is like so Treacherous 3 or whatever. It's
hello,
so like that
everybody,
era.
and how do you do? You know, it's just like
so good.
No,
it's
yeah,
so good.
And I even I used to say that album got good starting with track 2, but I even like Steal My Sunshine.
Yeah, I think it's a fine song. I think they did themselves a disservice with their video.
I agree.
Acting like a bunch of heshers in Florida or some shit.
Yeah, it kind of got a little But you know, it.
I think if no one ever would have seen Len, the people, they would have been into it.
I agree.
I mean, it's like Gorillas or like man, what's that hip hop record? It's all scratching about toothpaste and stuff. You know what I'm talking about?
Don't, but I love that description. What?
The red worm and all that. Do you remember that?
No.
Oh, what is that?
I love that description though. Scratching about toothpaste. Is this something they gave out like at the dentist office, like a 45 or something?
Oh, turntable. God damn it! Wave twisters is what it's called.
Oh no, I've never heard of that in my life, dude. What is wave twisters?
DJ Cuber, wave twisters.
Oh.
Okay, God, I had to look it up. It's freaking amazing.
Never heard of that, but I'm gonna check it out now.
Yeah, everyone should. Okay, so if you haven't taken anything else from the 25-hour-long podcast, listen to Len, listen to DJ Cuber, Wave Twisters, Hey Way to Steven. We'll just put all this on the playlist.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like I'm gonna have to actually make a list. So we're gonna have some butthole surfers on there. Of course, everything at least one song from each record that we talk about. Len, you guys are gonna be forced to listen to some Len because I 100%.
And you're gonna be like, why did I hate this?
Yeah, no, 100%. Len, Can't Stop the Bum Rush is an amazing record.
Yeah, I'm amazed that we both agreed on that.
Dude.
But I'm also pretty stoked.
Yeah,
because everyone disagrees with me all the time.
No, and the thing is like, well, and our mutual friend Tim is the one who actually told me that.
Okay.
He was like,
that makes sense. I'm sure we listened to that together back in the day.
He said to me, he's like, that record is awesome. Because I think I was making fun of that song one day. This was before I heard it. I was like, yeah, like some crap on the radio, like Steal My Sunshine. He's like, actually, buy that record from the used bin because it's all over the used bins now.
Oh, yeah. You can get it for $1.
You can get it for $1. Any Goodwill is going to have it at some point.
Yeah.
Any Goodwill. So you can get it for like 88 cents, right? And so I did. I bought it. They actually had it at the record collector in Iowa City on discount for they had like a 50-cent day or something, and they had that. So it's like, you know what? I'm going to buy it. It's 50 cents. If I hate it, then I'll throw it through Tim's window. I'll drive by his house or something, And I'll attach a note that's like, if you ever... No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Tim, if you're listening to this. I would never do that to your house. Anyway. No, but for real. He told me to start with track 2. Well, I actually decided to listen to track 1, Steal My Sunshine. And then as soon as track 2 started, I was like, oh my God, he's right. And it made that song sound better.
Yeah, I agree. Once you hear it in context, it's better.
Yeah, in context. Now, what's also interesting about Len, and I'm going to keep this extremely short because we're really veering off topic here, but that's great. That's awesome. Len started out as a 2-piece because there's a brother and sister in the group.
Right.
And they started out as a 2-piece straight up indie rock band. Mm-hmm. Like it was just drums and guitar, and it sounded like, I don't know, something like Slater Kinney or something. And that was their first album they put out, and then somehow they just made this awesome electronic record for a major label. It's an amazing story, actually.
It's awesome.
Okay. So,
cool. I'm glad that you mentioned Record Collector because all of these records that we're talking about from Sean came from Record Collector.
Oh, did they really?
Without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, they're the ones at least we're talking about, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But I know that he shopped there a lot more than me. He was a lot more supportive in a lot of ways in Iowa City than I ever have been.
I I actually,
yeah,
I ran into him numerous times there. That's actually,
oh yeah,
normally where I would run into him if it wasn't at a show.
yeah. So we don't have sponsors on the podcast, probably because we talk for 2 hours every time. But Record Collector, if you're listening, hey, and if you're a listener of the show, go into Record Collector and say Accelerativ Thrust said hi, and they'll be like, "Who the fuck is that?"
Yeah, who's
and
Accelerativ
it'll be
Thrust?
awesome. So,
and what does that mean? What does Accelerativ Thrust mean?
What does that mean? Get out.
Yeah, exactly. What the fuck? Now we're cussing.
We should give a shout out to Record Collector for real.
No, yeah, absolutely. Record Collector.
These records came from there, so.
And not only that, but Record Collector's always been a primo spot for me to go and find a lot of cool shit over the years.
Oh yeah. I bought Eskimo by the Residents there. Changed my life.
That's such a. The first Residents I ever heard was the commercial album.
Pretty good.
That was it for me. After that, I was like, I don't know why I even listen to music anymore. Why do I even try? And then I was like, that was
probably their intent.
Yeah, probably. And then I was like, okay. I heard other stuff from them, and I'm like, oh, this is why. It's Residents, man. That's a whole nother. So now we're gonna have to put Residents on there.
Another episode.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Yeah, we definitely. Okay, so we're at your second one now, right, Eric?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'll just stick with that. How Sean was always super supportive of Iowa City and the art that was happening in it. My next choice is Golden Dust. They were a group from Iowa City, consisted of Justin Thigh, who I knew, but we weren't necessarily close, and Joe Huerman, who we've gotten to know each other a little bit better over the years. Joe Huerman also goes under the moniker Nightmare Imagery and does like really sick logos, mostly for metal bands, logos and art. Really gore-oriented metal stuff. But Golden Dust isn't like that at all. It's very synth-oriented. It's almost post-punk in its own way, kind of no-wavy. I hear a lot of Kraftwerk, but maybe that's because they use the same sort of flute sound for their leads a lot. But I also hear a lot of Tuxedo Moon, Section 25, a lot of those kind of things. But it's cool because Sean always was into stuff that was happening here in town. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to clear my throat.
No, that's okay.
He was always way into stuff happening here in town and always supportive of everyone, even though I don't think he ever tried to be seen. He never really tried to be noticed or be part of the scene or like networking and mingling and shit. Like that wasn't who he was, Right.
Right.
But he always was a part of it and always was supportive, went to shows about the records, told everyone else about it. And so he was a big part of the scene. And I think that like at his funeral, that was obvious. There was a lot of people that you might have been like, oh, I didn't even know Sean knew that person,
Absolutely.
But it was because he talked to them just like he talks to everyone else and was just always really supportive of this town. And I think he's remembered fondly by a lot of people in Iowa City. And so that's super cool. It's cool to find your home, I guess, later in life after living a couple of different places. And I feel like I've done that here. And Sean being here with me was definitely a big part of that element of feeling like home. Like this is my hometown now, basically. So,
sure.
Yeah, Golden Dust.
Sure. And right on the money as far as the description. I listened to this and I loved it. I'm so glad that you put this on your list. And it's fantastic. I mean, it reminded me of. Now, was this did you say this was on Sean Reed's label, Night People, as well?
Yeah, this now Night People, yeah.
Okay, and that totally makes sense because I hear the Night People aesthetic. It's almost lo-fi, but not. It's somewhere between lo-fi and
yeah,
kind of has that grittiness, sort of. But then it also is a little bit, it's not like as lo-fi as some of the other stuff that I've heard, that
right.
kind of mingles in that sort of genre, the new wave,
Yeah.
sort of like underground sort of sound. Yeah, I hear a lot of craft work in the synthesizers particularly.
Yeah.
I also hear a little bit of like something like maybe Joy Division or something.
Absolutely.
A little bit.
I was just going to say that.
And
the vocals are very Ian Curtis
and even
oriented.
something that was like kind of a little bit more modern than like a modern take on that sound, like The Faint.
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of something like The Faint. And so yeah, it was just a really great listen. It's a record that is just, it is what it is, and that's what you're gonna get. There's no surprises on it. It's a new wave record, and it makes no it has absolutely no qualms about being a new wave record. That's just straight up what it is, and that's I love that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I love that. And that's what reminds me about The Faint more than anything about it, is that The Faint also were a sort of a modern take on new wave, and they were just unapologetic about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Gimpy got to play with them once. It was cool.
I heard that
before they were like big or well known or anything. I think we played in a bowling alley or something.
Really got into The Faint like a lot.
Yeah, they're cool.
Still love that record. I love the Dance Macabre record. I think that's just fantastic. They put out another record later called Fascination, which is just, I actually think that might actually be like their best record.
Oh yeah,
it's so good. Like I really like it.
I don't know if I heard that, to be honest.
It's so good, but I mean it's either that or Dance Macabre. They put out, like, one of their members just recently passed, and I don't, like, keyboardist or something, and they I don't think they're a band anymore, but they did put out one like last album like 3 or 4 years ago that was really good as well. They
cool.
But yeah, no, Golden Dust. It just reminds me of that stuff. It was just a really great listen. And I always really appreciated the Night People aesthetic that Sean Reed brought to the Midwestern, Eastern music scene. There wasn't anybody else really doing anything like that at the time.
No, I was always so jealous of everyone on there. And just beyond jealous.
and I always was like, still am jealous of like Sean's ability to be. His artistic ability is just unreal. I remember.
He does nice stuff.
I remember. I actually was in a couple of art classes at the high school with him, and I just remember like anything he did was like just an automatic A+. I swear. It was just like, it was so good. It always has been.
Is that with Mr. Kitchen?
Yeah, Mr. Kitchen. Well, I don't know if Mr. Kitchen teaches now. I don't think he teaches now.
Nothing but F's for me, man. He hated like that.
Yeah, he didn't like me either. I remember like the first day he actually gave us an assignment. It was to draw our room, and he just wanted like our bed. Like that was it. Just like draw like our bed. And I put windows on it, on the walls, and I put like my posters on the wall, and he comes up to me and he like hovers over my shoulder. He's like, "What's this crap right here? What's this?" And I was like, I don't know. And he was just like, he takes the paper and he like shows everybody. He's like, "This is what Mr. Orr did here is exactly what I didn't want you to do.
Wow.
Yeah, he like really like humiliated me like at the time.
Yeah, he was good at that.
He was very good at that. Anyway, aside from all that though.
Yeah, one thing about Golden Dust too, I should mention. You said about the lo-fi. I think the sound, how it's lo-fi, but it's not. I think the reason for that is, I think they're using older synths and drum machines and stuff.
Oh, okay.
It was recorded by Luke Tweedy, who I think his ear generally leans more towards really clean things. Like his production, I feel, is very clean.
Makes total sense.
And tight. So I think that combination is what you're hearing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next record that I'm gonna pick, the John Spencer Blues Explosion, Plastic Fang. Two things that I decided to, when I saw this on the list on Discogs, I decided that I was gonna, if nobody else had claimed it, I was gonna go ahead and claim it because I had heard of the John Spencer Blues Explosion, and I owned the album Orange at one time and listened to it a handful of times. I was never a huge fan of the John Spencer Blues Explosion, but I always liked their silliness because they had like a unapologetic silliness to them, like, and
That's true.
It seemed like they were like kind of like Blues for Jesus Lizard fans. Yeah,
gotcha.
Like that's kind of how I would describe them. And some of that wore thin to me. Like they just weren't and still are not a band that I'm gonna like, listen to all the time or anything. I loved the remix that they did of this song called Flavor, which was on this EP they released in the 90s called Experimental Remixes. And it was a remix. They had a song called Flavor on the album Orange, which was Orange is kind of like their big record of the 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And they did a remix of it on this Experimental Remixes EP with Beck and Mike D from the Beastie Boys. And it's fantastic. They even did a video, and it was one of my favorite videos.
Cool.
I recommend checking out that video. I think it's hilarious. But anyway, so I just decided to check this out because I hadn't really heard a John Spencer Blues Explosion album since then. And I gotta say, man, I really like this, man. It's just a great, again, it's kind of like, it doesn't sound anything like Golden Dust, but this is like a record where there's just no surprises about, it's not by any means an experimental record or any sort of departure from what the John Spencer Blues Explosion were doing before this record. I do think that the production kind of sounds a little cleaner on this one to me. But there's just some really great, like, just rock songs on this. Like the opening track, Sweet and Sour. It's just so goofy and so like absurd. He's just like, it's just got that really like almost like Delta blues feel to it. But it's also still like kind of dirty and sort of in your face. Still has that element of like noise rock to it or something like that. There's a couple of other tracks on here, like Down in the Beast, I think is just a banger. And the last track called You Want to Get It, I mean, I think that's just, it just sounds like a really like just fun jam session between a bunch of like, musicians, and it sounds like John Spencer Blues Explosion were just having fun on this record. It's, like I said, it's nothing that, it's like Helios Creed. I could find myself just pulling this out once every couple of months. I don't think I'll ever get obsessed with it. Maybe if I had discovered it earlier in my life, that would be the case. One of the things I do want to point out, though, is the artwork to this album is insane. I mean,
it's really cool.
It's got this like comic book, this really like dark comic book feel to it, and even the inner sleeve, the track listing is listed in like this comic book font, and it's just really, it's packaged like a like straight up DIY band. And I guess they were a DIY band in a way, because they were, I don't know if they ever signed to a major label, but I see that they were on Matador Records, which is still an indie label. But yeah, it's a fun record, fun rock record, and it's an example of something that I didn't know Sean was ever really into, the John Spencer Blues Explosion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and honestly, I think that Jeff, the third member of Gimpy, might have had a big part in that. He was way into it. I mean, it never really stopped playing during that time period. Yeah. It didn't matter if it was Orange or Now I Got Worry or whatever. Like, it was something that was always happening. And I think, I don't want to speak for Jeff, but I think the beats really did it for him. He's a hip hop DJ now in Minneapolis, I believe. And he had or still has a band that he DJs in. So he was really beat oriented. And in Gimpy, he programmed all the beats and all the synthesizer programming and stuff. So I think that was probably a lot of the reason. But yeah, there was a solid 3 or 4 years of my life where John Spencer was kind of always playing in the background. I didn't get into it that much, though, to be honest. I like it, and I liked this record, Plastic Fang, because it was a little more rock and roll feeling than some of the later ones that seemed a little more almost like R.L. Burnside or something, where it was like almost hip-hop beats with blues over it.
Yes.
You know? And I was never a big fan of Pussy Galore either, so I don't know if maybe that's more what they sounded like, was more of that rock and roll versus that syncopated, almost to the point of being hip-hop beats or whatever. So I'm not sure, but this feels a little more rock-oriented to me. You could have took a 20-second snippet of this in the middle of one of these songs and said, "This is the Cramps," and I'd be like, "Oh, hell yeah, it's the Cramps."
Yeah, it really...
Like, I wouldn't have known.
It really has that
It's
feel.
really rocking, so...
Yeah, it really has that feel to it. I was always a bigger fan of John Spencer did this side project with his wife called Boss Hog.
Yeah, I liked that too. It reminded me of Timbuk 3, if you've ever had the
no, I've never
fortune of listening to. Oh, I love them and everyone else hates them, so that's the way it is. Who cares?
I'll have to check that out.
Their harmonies are beautiful and super tight, and almost exactly like what Boss Hog did,
really?
A couple decades later or 15 years later or whatever.
Wow.
So, anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry to cut you off too, because I've been doing that with you as well, so I apologize for that. But Boss Hog, yeah, they're I think it's their self-titled record that came out in like 95. They were signed to a major label, but yeah, it's a project that John Spencer did with him and his wife, and I was always a bigger fan of Boss Hog than I was of actual John Spencer Blues Explosion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, so yeah, this was a cool little find, that
my favorite parts definitely were Bernie Worrell's parts, the keyboardist from Parliament
Funkadelic. Yeah. I was shocked.
The last synthesizer section is just basically Flashlight. I mean, it's just the exact same bass synth sounds, and it that was really cool. I didn't expect to hear that. So.
No, and I was actually shocked that Bernie Worrell was even on this.
Yeah.
So that's...
I feel like I cut you off again. What were you going to say in closing about this record?
Oh, no. I think I said all that I was going to say, man.
Oh.
Like, in all honesty, I Yeah, no, I think that's it, Eric.
Cool. All right. My next one is Bogdan Rosinski, and the record is called. Let me look it up. Sorry, it's a weird title. My Love, I Love is the title.
Yep.
Every song on the album is called My Love, I Love.
Yeah.
Makes it kind of hard. I think the one, if I were going to put it on a playlist, would probably be number 14.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Like that one.
When you go to the Wikipedia for the album, I think it was the Wikipedia. It's My Love I Love 1, My Love I Love 2, so it actually, I think maybe on the physical release, maybe it's actually like numbered. I don't know. But yeah, I thought that was really weird. Anyway, sorry to.
Yeah, no, not at all. But the funny thing is, the record itself is like this soft pink vinyl. I don't even think the label says A or B.
Oh, it doesn't.
Like,
okay.
I didn't know which side I was listening to until I listened to it on Spotify.
So. You would know about the physical copy because we're talking about records.
Yeah.
So
I really liked this record. I think it is hard to place it squarely in any sort of genre or whatever. I would say that there's elements of post rock. There's elements of techno and moments. I mean, there's synths, there's beats. Sometimes there's singing. Sometimes there's accordion. I don't know. There's a lot going on, but at no point does it ever like pop off and get strange or weird or dissonant. It's all very soothing and calming, and it just goes a lot of places, and that it's amazing. The reason I picked this one though is that this is going to sound weird, but I'm just going to talk it through and hopefully find meaning as I talk. The record, the aesthetic of it, the look of it, it's very not macho, and I think that was a thing about Sean that I always really liked, is that he didn't have this sort of need to be manly, and he didn't have this element to him that would stop him from listening to things or watching things or reading things that were an affront to this sort of inherent manliness that a lot of us unfortunately have. And I totally remember Sean all the way back when this came out saying, you have to listen to this, you're going to love it. And me looking at the cover and me looking at the pink vinyl and honestly being, I don't want to say turned off by it, but confronted by it. I mean, it was so not macho. I don't have a better word than that, I guess. But that's something that I always really appreciated about Sean, is he didn't have this false sense of what it meant to be a man and what that made you do or what that stopped you from doing or even anything like that. He derived what it was to be a person from life and what he wanted to achieve and how he wanted to treat people. And I just, it's one of those things that if I could go back, I would have not held on to my machismo as much. I would have been more open to a lot of the things that he tried to expose me to. So that's the real reason I picked this record. And that's, me just obviously feeling bad for being that kind of dude for a long time, But we're all, we're all changing and figuring out who we are. But I feel like Sean knew much earlier than a lot of us that stuff wasn't important.
Yeah, that's that definitely right away, that definitely is a vibe that I got listening to this record is that it was somebody, a male specifically, who was just really just letting it all out. I mean, it really there was just a lot of emotion on it, and it just sounded really vulnerable.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
On top of that, it was a very interesting listen. I mean, it reminded me in some ways of that Arthur Russell record.
Sure.
Because it just sounded very intimate and weird and confrontational and vulnerable. Again, I'll use that word again, and just really, it just sounded like somebody who was just naked, not, to speak figuratively, in front of everybody. It was just like there were these themes of love and what it meant to be a man, basically.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, it and just from the title alone, My Love, I Love, and it's really there were, to me, it sounded at times like a really just weird R&B record, kind of.
For
but
sure.
With like techno, like you said, techno elements, and it's interesting too, like a lot of the elements of electronic music that were here were very deconstructed. And at times it almost sounded like he was going to maybe go into some noise or something, and then it just kind of, it would sort of just like stop, and then you would be left with this like beautiful melody or something. Just really strange stuff. It was pop music the way that I would like to hear it done more often, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it was just really cool. And I did a little bit of research on the artist.
Yeah.
And he's like usually like a drum and bass jungle type guy.
I've never listened to anything else.
Yeah.
But this seems to be a departure of sorts.
At least from what I can see, I didn't listen to anything else either, but I kind of want to go back and listen to some of that stuff, because I'm not a connoisseur really of like drum and bass jungle music.
Yeah.
I think some dubstep is kind of interesting, but I never really, I couldn't tell you the first thing about who to check out in that genre. I mean, I only know the mainstream ones. I know like the Chemical Brothers and Fat Boy Slim and those guys. I do know a couple of weird ones like Square Pusher,
Yeah.
But I've never just explored it, and honestly just never really had the interest to explore it. It's just it's never really been my thing. But
and that's the funny thing, is like this didn't feel like music that Sean necessarily would have gravitated towards generally.
Yeah.
But the fact that he worked with Tesher and some other people, and basically did, like Aphex Twin kind of ambient and drum and bass and stuff like that, I can see how Sean found it. He was always that guy, like, oh, this guy worked with this guy or this girl or this group of people, and like then he would go find that. He was a little obsessive, honestly.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
That's great, actually. I mean, because this record is not something that I would have probably even, I probably would never even have seen it in my life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and
it's great. Like that's a record I probably would listen to, just on the basis of how interesting it was.
Well, you can put it on and it blends into the background, but also piques your interest every little while. You're like, oh shit, what just happened? That was cool.
And hearing stuff like that, and Arthur Russell and Fire Tools and some of the stuff you've been introducing me to, this deconstructed sort of way of making music, it's actually influencing me in a way. Like today, for instance, I detuned my acoustic guitar, and just sort of like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that
for sure.
This is like a direct result of any of that, but the way that Arthur Russell was playing the cello on that, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's done in such a way that, you know what I mean, like is not
For sure.
It's not typical. And so hearing this kind of stuff it's inspiring me, man. And I would put this Bogdan Rzinski, is that how you say the name?
Yeah.
I would put the Bogdan Rzinski album in, if there is a genre that you can put it in, it's something that I could never name, but like I would put it in with like Arthur Russell and Fire Tools and even like Amnesia Scanner, just because all of them are doing deconstructed music in their own way, I feel.
Right. I think also, though, it wouldn't be that out of place to say something like Godspeed You Black Emperor or...
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, almost even like Neutral Milk Hotel with some of those... there's almost like marching sections. There's a lot of accordion and things like that.
Also, a big comparison. Thanks for mentioning that, because that reminds me. A big comparison that I could actually... It doesn't sound like this record, but I would not be surprised. I don't know when this record came out. My Love, I Love, was it in the 90s or
2001?
Okay, so it probably couldn't have really been an influence. But maybe this record was an influence on that. I don't know. But I can hear some comparisons to like something like Kid A by Radiohead.
Sure.
You know, or something like that. It's just really really interesting. Yeah, no, I'm psyched with you know that was a really great listen. It was a beautiful, gorgeous listen, for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Now on to something that is not necessarily a beautiful, gorgeous listen. It is to me, but it probably isn't necessarily to a lot of other people. This is a record that means so much to me because this is a band that means so much to me. Those of you who watched any of my YouTube videos on my channel, I actually did an entire video about this band. No Means No. They're a band from Vancouver, British Columbia, or I should say was, because they broke up, I think, officially in like 2010 or something. But they had been around since the early 80s. This is another one that I was actually kind of surprised, but at the same time not surprised that Sean had. More because it makes sense to me that Sean would be into this, because I know that he was into a lot of like, you know, weird, aggressive punk rock, you know? But it's more so because this record is actually pretty hard to find, at least around here. So when I saw this, I had to claim it, because it's one of my favorite records from this band, and probably maybe ever. And it's called Wrong by this band No Means No. The band started out as a two-piece, the brothers, Rob and John Wright, and they've had various other members. This one came out in 1989. I think this was like their fourth record, and it's just, to me, it's just like a progressive punk rock masterpiece. I think it's really just heavy and sounds really aggressive at times. And I think that oftentimes if you get deep into No Means No's catalog, they're almost purposely playing these characters on their records and in their songs of just really like terrible people. Like almost like they're almost like, I don't know, like LARPing in their music, I almost feel like, because it's almost kind of like Dead Kennedys, for instance, like a song like I Kill Children, you know. Obviously, Jello Biafra is not advocating for killing children, you know what I mean? But No Means No kind of take that whole aesthetic or that idea to like the next level. I mean, it's like, you know, look at their name, No Means No. It's a famous for being a rape slogan. You know, like no means no. You know what I mean? Like it's something that, you know, it's common sense, you know. But it can also mean, like they were saying, I saw an interview with them, and they were saying that it can also just mean like your mom telling you no, that you can't have that toy when you're 7 years old. You know, no means no, you know. And so they kind of explore a lot of these sort of themes, I think, with humanity in their songs. And I mean, the very first track, it's Catching Up. I mean, the first line that Rob Wright is yelling is, have you seen the news? The dead walk. I mean, that's like the first line, and it's just like, I can't think of like any more of an appropriate prophetic song than that today. Like, it's just it's just unbelievable. And then the musicianship is rad. I mean, these guys like play like they're trained jazz musicians. It's insane. And I've watched some videos of them playing live, and it's just, I can't say enough great things about this. I think they're the most underrated band ever. Like, I don't think that they're one of my favorite bands. They're in my top 5 favorite bands of all time. And so many good songs on here, like Rags and Bones, which is hilarious because there's like this little guitar solo in the middle where it's just the guitar player the band stops and the guitar player plays one note for like 30 seconds before you just go back into like this punk rock insanity. Oh No Bruno, there's like some bizarre, like that. Another thing that No Means No did that I really liked is they had these bizarre moments of like where they would like, I don't know, they would get like a female vocalist to do like these like chorus parts, these like singing chorus parts in the middle of the song, and like these breakdowns. And The Tower is another great song. And there's too many good songs on this album for me. And it's really fast, in your face. But I also think there's a sophistication to it. And I feel like a lot of bands in the genre that they were playing with, they couldn't even comprehend what this band was doing. That's my observation. I mean, I know that if I would have been in like the Minutemen or something like that, and I saw No Means No, I would have been like, holy shit. You know what I mean? And the Minutemen's a crazy band themselves, you know? Yeah. And it's like they're playing like this crazy punk rock through the filter of prog rock. And I think it has a lot to do with where they came from, because I've noticed that Canadian punk rock and metal bands always seem to have the most adventurous, what am I trying to say here? The most adventurous sounds. They seem to be, for whatever reason,
like Voivod.
Like Voivod's a good example, or even I don't know what your thoughts are, but even Rush, you know.
Oh yeah, for sure.
From Canada, like, you know, it just seems like Canadian punk rock gets a little bit more weird than a lot of American punk rock, and No Means
it's a little more like cerebral.
Cerebral, you know? And I think that No Means No really spoke to the ugliness of humanity in such a way that nobody else was really able to do. That's just my observation. And it makes total sense that they were on Alternative Tentacles, Dead Kennedys
Label. I think so too.
I can't say enough good things. If you're a fan of punk rock and you don't know who No Means No is, I really recommend you check them out. It doesn't have to be this album. It can be. They have a few albums on Spotify, but really just anything from them to me is just fantastic. This, though, I would say Wrong is among their best record, if not their best record. So yeah, No Means No.
Yeah,
Wrong.
This is the first one I've listened to.
Yeah.
To be honest, and I liked it a lot. It was it really is pretty out there in its own way, yet really conventional in other ways.
Yes.
Like, I hate it when people just compare something to a bunch of other things, and that's supposed to tell you what it is or what it sounds like.
Right.
But there were certain things I couldn't get past. Like, to me, it sounded right in line with Rollins, but also like Jesus Lizard.
Yep.
Some Fugazi.
Yep.
There was a funk metal element to it, I felt like, or a prog metal. Like I said with like Voivod, I didn't even actually think that they were both from Canada. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I can hear that. There's like a cowpunk element to the whole thing, which the Dead Kennedys had.
Yeah.
And so that's there. But it really goes everywhere. I mean, just without a doubt. If you listen to one song and say, I don't like that, listen to the next song. I mean, it's like the old Iowa weather joke. You know, you don't like it, wait around 5 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how this felt to me too. It was math rocky, but it was punk rock and it was heavy metal. It was all these things, and they did it well, and they did it purposefully. It wasn't just a mashup of things. These are separated. The elements were separated, yet worked together. It's really weird, though. The band that I really felt they sounded most like that I know of was a band called Annihilate.
Oh, yeah, Annihilate. Yes.
Yeah. The guy would wear a big sock monkey costume. I freaking love Annihilate. But that was the closest thing I could think of to the sound of this group that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And especially with the goofiness of the vocals sometimes, it did feel like characters, like they were playing characters at times. And that's always cool too. Like, sometimes you want to hear a real, actual, heartfelt, personal connection with someone you're listening to, and other times you just want them to present, who they're not, like a made-up character. I think that's a lot of fun too. So,
yeah.
I thought this record was cool, and I mean, just 100% in line with the kind of stuff Sean liked. I mean, I think all of our choices today fit squarely into the shit he was into,
Absolutely. No, at the end of the day, I mean, it definitely, yeah, I mean, Sean just had a really great ear for just a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And he introduced me to a lot of different things, a lot of different shit. One story that I'd like to share real quick is he was always super supportive of whatever I was doing, like musically. And I just remember he booked that show in the basement of Public Space 1 in Iowa City, mm-hmm. That my old band Disgruntled Noisebox played. And I just remember we made him laugh so hard that he was actually the dude who was asking for an encore.
Yeah, right.
Because he was sure. I'm putting on this show and it has to be done by a certain time, but I don't care. You guys can play one more song,
Oh yeah.
And he was just always super cool, and man, yeah. It's just oh man, yeah. It's crazy. Life is just crazy,
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely a go-to, a golden guy for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nuts. But anyway, yeah. So Anything else you'd like to add, Eric?
No, I think we talked about some good music, talked about a good dude. What else is there?
Yeah, that's true. Good music and good dudes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to dedicate this episode to, the memory of Sean, which obviously we're doing,
Yeah.
So, again, we're going to be updating the playlist once this episode gets uploaded. I'm not quite sure when that's going to be. It basically just depends on when my lazy ass gets around to doing it. But it'll be definitely in the next couple of days. We got some other cool things in store with the podcast coming up. So stay tuned, guys. I'm excited. And I think that's it.
All right. Cool. See y'all later.
See y'all later. We'll hear from you next week.